time for LOL, Lord of Light.
Lol. Hello.
Hi. Hello.
Welcome to Hugo Girl, the Hugo award-winning podcast.
Woo-hoo! We did it.
I'm Haley.
I'm Lori.
I'm Amy.
And we read a much-requested classic of the genre, Lord of Light by Roger Zelazny. It was published in 1967, won the Hugo in 1968, and was also nominated for a Nebula Award.
We're coming for you, Raj.
Yeah. Wait, first, do we have any housekeeping?
Yes. When you said we're coming for you, Raj, I didn't realize that was like a nickname for Roger, and I was like, what did Raj do?
No, Raj is nice. No, we're not coming for.
Raj is our nice friend. What did?
We're not coming for Raj. Hi, Raj. We're coming for Raj.
Raj did say he got our Life Day card, and then he sent us a note on Mastodon and said, it's nice to see that other people have truly horrible handwriting, and then in parentheses, looking at you, Andersons.
After we had a whole conversation about signatures as we were signing those cards.
Kevin
Y'all
and I
signed
were
squiggles.
personally attacked.
I put my lawyer signature on it.
I signed after everybody because I was busy that night, and then I signed it with print letters.
I'm on my third name in
prints.
life. I don't know what to do. My hand doesn't know what to do. Okay, in addition to that, we got such a nice email from listener Megan. And the
We
reason
sure did.
we got such a nice email is, number one, because Megan is very nice. Number two, when we did the hoodie giveaway, which Megan won,
Good
coincidentally.
job, Megan.
Oh, yay.
Crushing it.
I put in there, what's your favorite book, as one of the questions, in part to weed out people who are just signing up for free things, because that happened one time and it was so weird. And also because I just like reading them. And Megan put the Coldfire trilogy by C.S. Friedman and the Narantil Gem by Haley Zapel,
Which is wild.
which prompted me to re-listen to it. It's so funny.
It is so funny.
But anyway, I feel like the Coldfire trilogy by C.S.
restaurant?
Friedman.
Oh, it's the Eatery of Oceania.
I laughed so hard when I re-listened to it. It's so good. But anyway, so I feel like the Coldfire trilogy by C.S. Friedman is unsung. And so I sent Megan an email and I was like, hey, I just was so excited to see that you said that was your favorite, because I read it and I love it and I don't really hear people talk about it. And
When did it come out? I haven't heard of it.
oh, I don't know. It's
it
like
like
a
older?
90s mass market paperback kind of thing. I
It
would
was bought
guess
by
like
two people, Megan and Lori.
and also Joe Sherry. Joe Sherry and I have similar taste in old 90s mass market paperback fantasies, because he also really likes the Dragon Prince. Anyway, Megan said, unfortunately, nobody I work with could begin to understand why I appeared to hyperventilate when I got this email. Hugo Girl has been and continues to be a source of joy, comfort, and laughter in a world that seems allergic to those very things. I fangirled so hard I think I pulled a muscle when I read your
Aw.
response. And she went on and said some more nice things, and it was just really, really nice. It made us feel great, and we really appreciated it.
It qualifies as a review.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you too have something really nice to say and you are not on Apple Podcast, just send us a really nice email.
We read every single email.
Don't send us a mean email, though. Our days are long and hard. And we don't need that.
No, if you send us a mean email, I'm just going to delete it and pretend it didn't happen.
And the first person who gets an email, because we all share it on our phone, then marks it unread so that we can all read it in case we forget to tell the others.
Yes. Okay, we have a couple of reviews too. I'll read them quickly. Do you know what's funny? When I listen to a podcast where they read reviews, I fast forward through it. So if you're fast forwarding, that's okay.
Yeah.
So a Big Apple left us on Apple
Just one.
Podcasts.
One Big Apple.
One Big Apple. Fun bookie time. I haven't even finished listening to a single episode yet, but I can tell this pod is going to be in my regular rotation.
Aw.
Excited to hear more smart and funny takes on spec fic I loved or hated or will never have time to read.
I like to imagine this person listening to an episode in their car, hitting pause, swerving over to the side of the road, and leaving this review.
Wait, stop.
Thank you, a Big Apple. I hope that once you've completed an episode, you do in fact enjoy it.
I hope you find a friend to be your other Big Apple.
And then Joe Herbers, longtime listener, first-time reviewer. Joe says, the ladies of Hugo Girl are delightful.
True.
True. Off to a great start. I found this now Hugo award-winning podcast through Hugo's Their Podcast, which is also great.
Thanks, Seth.
Also true. Some years ago, and have been a fan since. Such a different approach to reviewing a book, even for books I haven't or won't read. That's a theme. Even for books I haven't or won't read, I always enjoy hearing their lively discussions.
Yeah.
Thanks, Joe. You're
Lively,
delightful.
ladies.
Yeah. I was hanging out with our friend Katie the other day, and she always mentions how much she loves it, even though she doesn't read the books. And she was telling another friend, she's like, it doesn't matter. It's still just really funny.
Our friend Anne doesn't read most of the books, but she still always listens. And she has a funny idea where she wants to come on the show and tell us what she believes the plot of a book to
I
be
love this
after
idea.
listening to an episode. It would almost be like a drunk history for books, kind of.
It should be Lord of Light.
And send us a voice recording telling us what you think Lord of Light is about after this podcast.
I love
because
that
we'll
idea.
make a mini-sode out of it.
That's such a good idea. I didn't think about a voice memo. We don't need to have to coordinate schedules.
That's true.
Perfect. Okay, that's it. Bye.
Bye. See you next week. Thanks,
Just
y'all.
kidding.
We
Don't
have
go.
to talk
Oh,
about this
no,
book.
no, yeah.
There's a book.
We're just starting.
Yeah, you still gotta lead a discussion on this
No, we
book,
don't.
ma'am.
See y'all later. Let's talk about something else.
Do you want to talk about your Spotify Wrapped?
I was proud of mine.
I was just shocked De La Soul was at the top of mine.
Yeah, people were complaining this year that maybe it's not as accurate as has been in prior years, but
I wish we were recording when I shared this fact because Haley laughed hysterically, but it gives you a location that you're a listener like most akin to. And mine was the Maritime Islands of Canada because of my Amy's making a face. You didn't hear that because of all of my sea shanty playlist listening. Like if I go in the kitchen for like a big baking day or a big cooking day, I'll be in there for like 4 or 5 hours.
Oh, I solve crimes during those times.
So I go in there for 4 or 5 hours, just like there once was a ship that put to sea. Over and over.
she goes to sea. Kevin has on noise canceling headphones.
Aww.
I had a lot of Taylor Swift. I'm a music snob in many ways, but I like a good pop song.
I also had Taylor Swift, which surprises me because I don't feel like I listen to her that much. She's everywhere.
Listen
That's
to
true.
her new album once all the way through, and then I just let the algorithm give me things after that.
Yeah.
So
The Spotify thinks that I should live in Bozeman, Montana because I listen to so much country music. Should we do a plot summary of this book?
You should. Not we.
I'm not
You.
doing it.
And we're not going to do it.
Nope.
All right. This is going to be very abbreviated because a lot happens. Every single sentence in this book is a different step to the plot, and there's a lot that happens, and there's 60,000 characters. Let's go. All right. In the future, humans on a space mission crash land on a new planet. They harness the power of technology and pretend to be gods based on the Hindu pantheon. Their descendants, they keep in a form of low-tech thrall, depriving them of advancement and technology like toilets. The god...
No, the people aren't toilets. The technology
Yeah,
is.
I didn't think for a second. I was
I knew-
like, they're like toilets?
I knew a man with a wooden leg named Bob. The god... The gods... Okay, so these gods... The gods also control who becomes enlightened, so they have a shitty government, and they're like... Basically, there's like a machine that tells them whether they can be karmatically advanced or reversed. And if you don't have enough good karma, and it's unclear how they determine what is good or bad, you can become an animal or an ugly person.
Oh, a middle-aged woman.
That's the worst
You
fate
can be
you could get.
sentenced to be a middle-aged woman.
But they
Yeah.
they do have it. They do it through a psych probe to see if you have any bad thoughts toward their system.
Yeah, bad karma is whatever they decide bad karma is.
Yeah.
And that's the only sentence that describes how it works in the entire
Right,
book.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
There is a special boy named Sam.
A real special guy.
There's
he-
always a special boy.
I know. He has 3,600 aliases. And he decides he hates his fellow gods. Specifically the power of the Trimurti, which I looked up, and that is the 3 strongest gods. Vishnu, Brahma, and Shiva. And he sets out to destroy them.
Except Yama is really.
He's a 16-year-old boy in an old man's body.
Sometimes they're friends, sometimes they're not.
Yama's really the one to
He's
beat.
in love with Kali, and Kali's really in with them. So I think that's the whole thing.
Yeah. Throughout the book, which is told in flashback form, we witness battles, the releasing of demons, which are really energy beings, and the native inhabitants of the planet. There's a little bit of talk about Buddhism, but not in a fun way or an inspiring way, and tons of trickster god machinations.
Which you hate.
Yes. The gods constantly change names and bodies. There are big battle scenes. I think Sam wins eventually, but I don't know what he gets. And that's it.
He gets equality, I think. That's what
Sure.
his whole goal was.
Yeah, it's unclear.
Basically, he just
yeah.
gets the gods to agree to stop meddling, essentially.
Good for them.
Okay.
I think. Listen,
Yeah.
I think.
I think they stopped opposing technological advancements among humans,
Yeah,
regular humans.
Sam was all about the democratization of information. And so,
Yeah. And so there's a group of the gods that are nicer, and they're called accelerationists. And I think that is, to me, the most interesting part of the book that I wish that it had focused on is like, how humans advance throughout different planets. That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
But I think this is a good way to segue into Goodreads, because this review that I read really summed up my feelings. Like, it's not funny, but it's just really good. All right. More than anything, I felt really disappointed by it. A world where the original settlers mastered the ability to transport people's minds, spirits into new bodies, kept it for themselves, and as such turned themselves into gods? That sounds so interesting. How does that make people feel? What are the economic implications? How has it shaped the lives of others and affected humanity?
we can't know.
None of this is explored. Instead, it is a religious hero's journey full of bland dialogue between gods.
The Goodreads reviews were so interesting in that there were none that were just like, wish I could give it 0 stars. They were all like really thoughtful essays.
Yeah.
With sometimes some quippy stuff in them, but I just didn't find any that were like, this is a box of rotten eggs, like you find for most books.
Most of the ones I read was like, this was confusing.
It's clearly not, a box of garbage.
Yeah, but usually someone out there will say that it is, and I couldn't find any of those.
I think I associated with a lot of people that were just like, I'm so confused.
Apologies, this is a little bit off color, but
Ooh.
not in a good way. Alvin on Amazon, his title of his review is Oriental Religion, which is not the correct nomenclature. And then he says, focuses on Oriental religions, but doesn't try to indoctrinate you. The story got confusing at times. That's the whole
They're
review.
not shoving it in your face.
Doesn't try to indoctrinate you. The story got confusing at times.
Well, those are both true.
He said, I want to write a half racist sentence.
But the other thing I wanted to bring up was, this was so weird. Lisa on Amazon's, her review was very thoughtful and nice and great. I'm not reading the whole thing. What I want to read out of her review was, weird fact. It was announced in 1979 that there was going to be a film, but that fell through due to some quote-unquote legal issues. CIA agent Antonio Mendez stole the script and the production drawings to conceal a rescue mission.
Oh, I've got data
the
on
whole
that.
Argo thing.
Argo.
Wild.
Yeah. I read that on Wikipedia and I couldn't really understand it, but it seemed interesting.
It's complicated.
Okay, I have one from Goodreads, and I apologize if I mispronounce this reviewer's name. It's Nandakishore Mridula, and he is basically a super reviewer with over 1,200 reviews on Goodreads and is the 13th most followed reviewer.
Wow.
And his review is quite long, very thoughtful. I pulled out a little piece of it.
How many stars did he give it?
2. Yeah. Yeah, it was the first one on there, so it may be like the top rated
I think I
2-star
read that
review.
one.
So it gives a summary of the conflicts between the gods. And then he says, this much is history. Roger Zelazny takes the bare bones of this story, adds the exotic ingredients of Indian myth and legend haphazardly, seasons it with the spirit of Prometheus who moved against heaven, and serves it up as a science fiction novel. For people who have not tasted exotic and spicy Indian dishes, at least not regularly, this is extraordinary fare indeed. Alas, for my jaded palate, this is quite ordinary.
That's good.
Burn.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
That's an erudite burn.
Yeah, the whole review was very smart.
Man.
Yeah. So, what y'all want to talk about?
I'll open with a question.
Okay.
Is this a novel? It is a fix-up, and that's fine, but I don't really think that
What's the fix-up?
where they take like parts of things that were published separately,
Oh.
like cereals and stuff.
Oh,
and
is that
then
what this is?
It doesn't seem like that.
Yeah, this was published in chunks, and it seems like
Well,
it
every
because
chapter
it's
is a standalone.
several extremely discrete stories, and to me, just because you put a bunch of fiction in between 2 covers doesn't make it a novel. I think it's like 7 short stories set in the same universe.
There is an arc.
Can you imagine how confusing it would be, though, to read just one of these versus 7?
Well, if you read them as like, a myth or a fable or something like that, I mean, you could get something out of it. Like the chapters, he was trying to make them read like a tale you would read in like, Edith Hamilton's mythology or whatever.
Yeah,
That's clear.
and if you got them, you would get them sequentially if you were reading them in a magazine.
That's true.
So you would be reading them in order. But for me, this does not work as a novel. It does have unifying characters, and you're right, Amy. There is sort of an arc, but for me, this is 7 short stories, or maybe 6 short stories. Maybe the last 2 chapters could be 1. I don't know.
It's really unclear until you get to the end, and maybe not even then, how the chapters work together chronologically.
It took me days.
Yeah. The fact that the second chapter goes back in time and he does not tell us that, and you have to wait until the end to know that is wild.
Well, and the people that gave it 5 stars on Goodreads were like, you just have to work for it. It's brilliant.
Is it?
Only clue that I had was that Tuck was an ape in the first chapter, and then he was a guy. And I was like, we must have gone back in time, I guess, to before they killed Sam.
But you don't get him until several chapters later.
Yeah, I wouldn't have known unless I'd read about. I was reading every review I could find, every schmoop summary, just to help locate myself on this book.
I read the Wikipedia summary, and I wonder if I would have understood it. But I was pretty clear early on that the first chapter was later, but it's not from anything in the book necessarily. I think it was something in the Wikipedia summary that helped me understand that.
Oh yeah, I thought Yama brought him back to life. So Yama brings Sam back to life. He Frankensteins him, and then I thought he just wandered off and went to the city to get a new body, and then somehow he got an army, and I didn't know how.
And it reads almost the same way. It doesn't matter.
Which is, I think, her point.
It doesn't matter.
I think that was her point, right? Because it doesn't matter. You read these things, and you see Sam going up against the gods over and over and over again. I mean, at the end, it wraps up, but yeah, it's very disjointed as a novel.
If you had to pick one of the 7 chapters that you like the most, mine is the one where he makes friends with Rild, because I think somebody changes. There's a little conflict, there's a little change. And he actually talks a little bit about Buddhism, which I'm really interested in. So I like that.
I can't remember who Rild is.
Rild was the guy that was sent to kill him, and then he becomes an acolyte.
I did like that.
Yeah, that one's good.
The first 4 chapters I pretty much liked. And then when it turned into wars and fistfights, I was confused or very bored or some combination of the two.
Yeah.
Apart from the long fist fight, I really liked the chapter where it might be the same chapter. It's the same chapter where Rild turns into the Buddha, and then Yama shows up. Is that all the same chapter? Yama shows up and he fights Rild. Yeah, I like that chapter too.
I also liked, I think it was the second one where he was a prince, and that was the first time we see somebody get a new body, and he does kind of that bait and switch, finds out that they weren't going to give me a working body.
Poor Shan of Arabak.
I know.
Poor Shan of Arabak. He just shows up to this town.
Do y'all know about the pun?
No.
Oh my God. I missed it, but I read about it in a review. There's a theory that he creates that character named Shan so that he could use, so that character has an epileptic fit, and I forget the exact quote, but it says the fit hits the Shan.
That's a what's that called?
Spoonerism.
Yes. Yeah. That's a spoonerism.
And y'all know that I love a pun, but 1, I missed that, and 2,
I missed it too.
2, I'm like, still not good enough.
There are people out there who are smarter than us.
In my defense, my book has typos in it, so maybe it wasn't in there. Yeah. Maybe it said the shit hits the fan in my...
So I guess before Sam gets enlightened, he is this crappy prince guy who takes Shan of Arabak and makes him go get the bad body the gods want to give him. Because poor Shan, how do we get around the fact that he did that to poor Shan?
Well, I think that
what did he
said
do
something about how
he made Shan go get the bad body that he knew the gods were going to give him, so he didn't get the bad body. And now Shan's stuck in this bad body.
Oh,
apparently he's hot, but epileptic.
There's so many body changes that I lost.
Not that epilepsy is bad. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
It's not perfect. Not quote unquote perfect.
Or deliberately not perfect.
Sabotaged.
And they're growing the bodies, so that's a choice.
Oh yeah,
they're vat growing the bodies.
Epilepsy in him.
So I think he said something about how Shan had done something pretty bad to him in the past. I mean, probably not bad enough to be tricked into
Maybe
a new
it was
body.
His karma.
But there was something that happened between them where he was like, this sucks for you, but I don't feel that bad because of that other thing that you did. So there was some little addressing of why it wasn't okay, but it was okay.
And he's going to go take down the gods, so maybe he justified it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think this book would have been better if it was longer, and I almost never say that.
The food was so bad. It's such small portions.
I think it would have been better if someone else wrote it.
I think, too, it would be better if it was written in the first person, so it had more heart. I want to hear from Sam's brain, what he's thinking.
It was very distant.
There are no emotions.
It is a very cold book.
You get told about emotions. It's a show don't tell situation.
I also thought that Tuck was the most interesting character in the first chapter, and I thought that he was going to be the protagonist, and I was interested because we get everything from his perspective in the first chapter, and I think it is really interesting to walk around in the shoes of a guy who is now an ape, but still has a human intelligence and
an
perspective.
Archivist.
Yeah, he's the most interesting person.
I actually was like, oh, this is going to be pretty interesting, and then we, for the most part, left him behind, and so I was kind of disappointed in that. But I will give Zelazny, there are passages in this book that I think are really nice.
Some of the writing is beautiful.
So especially when he's describing the natural world, and I have a part that I, if you guys don't mind if I take a moment and read it. It's when Tuck is going through the forest, and it says, Tuck made his way through the forest. He moved from tree to tree, branch to branch, watching the trail below him. His fur was moist, for the leaves shook small showers down upon him as he passed. Clouds mounted at his back, but the sun of early morning still shone in the eastern sky, and the forest was a swarm of colors in its red gold light. I mean, I'm just right there.
That's
like
lovely.
the little droplets coming off of the leaves, and like I can think of like my fluffy dog when he's got like dew on it. He's not wet, but he's got little droplets on his fluff, and like it's chilly, but you can feel that warm sun. I was just right there. So this first chapter, it's like foundation. The first chapter was, for me, it was so good. And then I was like, for the rest of the book, I was like, are you okay? But I really did enjoy a lot of the first chapter.
The writing style really threw me off. My brain couldn't figure out what I was trying to read. Like, was I trying to read something that was supposed to be a flowery philosophical thing, or was I reading something that was more lowbrow?
It's very uneven.
And there was just something about every time I picked up this book to read, there was something about it that put me to sleep instantly.
And some of the transitions between the dialogue, like there will be dialogue for so long, and it's like one sentence back and forth per character to the point where I would lose track of which character was saying what.
I wrote that down because most writers say things like, yes, she said.
Right.
No, he replied.
Yeah.
And that really helps.
I would lose track of who was talking. And so there would be that, or there would be these really long descriptions of battles and fights between two people.
Friendly fist fights.
With no dialogue.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was difficult. It was difficult for me to settle into a rhythm of reading this book.
I had a love-hate approach to the long philosophical parts because like Sam gives long speeches from time to time.
Yeah. Full pages with the paragraph breaks.
So the first chapter has this one really long speech that he gives while they're burning Mara's body.
The trickster god.
Yeah. And I did not like it the first time I read it. I then went back and read it again and liked it a lot more because it's really difficult to write something like that and have it actually sound like something that makes sense. Like I could not sit here and write something that sounds like it's coming out of the Buddha's mouth. You know what I mean? And if you go back and read it, it actually is really, I mean, it sums up all the themes of the book for one thing, which is very handy. But then it also just has these, it's all about how names don't mean anything. It's the essence of something that means something, how action doesn't mean anything, but but striving does. Like it's a really interesting part. And like he has this line, each day is different, but each is day, which that stuck with me. It's like,
say it again.
So the only thing that is constant is change, right? That's a Buddhist thing, I think. And
that's true.
And he's sort of elucidating on that. And he's also talking about how you can experience something, but when you try to describe it to somebody, it loses all of its meaning, and how words mean nothing. It's all about experience, and it's all about the essence. And then, but that's one of the lines in there. Is each day is different, but each is day, and it's like things are the same, but things are different. I don't know. It was really good, but at the same time, it was very much. It takes you right out of the action. So,
I think one thing that would help this book, and so he's written a lot of other books about different famous old gods like Egyptian, Greek, all that kind of stuff. I think gods are nothing without people. We need more interactions with people. Even Neil Gaiman does this in American Gods. And the Greek gods, if you think about Hera and Zeus and Aphrodite, they're always fucking with people. Like Zeus is always cheating on, like it just, there's more, they're more involved in people's lives. And it seems like the Hindu gods, and I don't know if that's just because I don't know about Hinduism as much, they seem very like hands-off gods, like deists almost.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know enough about it to know. But like, I mean, the interesting thing I think in this book is that the gods are people. So, mostly when you're reading mythology is the gods messing with human people. But these are actually human people who have just decided that they're gods.
But with like even less characterization, I think.
So that's another, one of the things I think is interesting is that like at some point it becomes unclear whether these people have become the gods they think they are, or if they named themselves after the gods they wanted to be, if that makes sense, right?
Is he Christian because he's just kind of a lecher and drunk?
Right.
Or did he become that? Or does he want to be that? Does he pretend to be that?
Right.
Is he that?
So like, and that's sort of goes back to the speech in the beginning when he talks about names being symbols and things like that. It's like these names tell you a lot about who these people think they are, but they also mean absolutely nothing because that's not who these people are.
Yeah, and he doesn't really get into the details of it. Like, we know that Neridi the Black likes Christianity, but like, I couldn't tell you one other thing about that man.
Right.
/ God.
So it really is like, it's a story about allegory, and fighting symbols and identity.
And that's like A+. That's the college answer that I think is correct, but like, I still
you don't
like
feel it. Yeah, you don't feel it.
I felt nothing reading
That's
this
what,
book.
when I went back and like read about the book, I was like, okay, yes, all this makes sense. But
You are correct.
But when I was reading the book, I was like, I was absolutely unengaged with it. The idea is good.
There's really no one to get too attached to.
I mean, I liked Sam.
Yeah, I like him.
Sometimes the things that happened in the book were pretty funny. Like there were some things I chuckled at.
Me too.
Like him. The one thing that I really liked. So Yama is a child who got transmogrified into a man.
Well, that's what's hard to... So they've changed bodies so many times that I don't know, like, what even is identity at that point?
Well, right. I think that's part of the point.
So
right?
Yama on the like original spaceship was a child?
He's no, he was third generation, so he wasn't one of the first.
You mean okay, that's what
so
you
he
mean.
was
Okay,
a child. God's already doing their thing. He's a genius, so they take him on, and then he gets put in an old man body, like because I think that's what was available because he was about to die because of an accident.
I missed.
And but my favorite
really
thing,
hard to miss.
So
it's
that's
really
the one.
easy to miss things.
I think this is the one person you get characterization in, though. Talk maybe the other one.
The monkey. Yeah.
But so Sam and Yama are sitting there having a chit chat because Yama came there to kill Sam, and Sam's like, "You're not going to kill me, haha! I'll show you why in a minute." And then they're talking.
It is just like that.
And then at some point,
I'll show you why in a minute.
And at some point, Sam says to Yama, so Yama's in love with Kali.
Also known as Candy the Fierce, which is a rapper name.
Yeah. Who is also Sam's ex, which is great. But Sam says, "How's that bitch Kali?" Oh, and just like a 16-year-old boy, that makes Yama go, "What the fuck you just say?" And he like jumps up and runs at Sam and gets stuck in a bunch of quicksand because he can't not rise to the bait because he's a child.
Yeah,
which I think was great.
I like in that same scene, Sam warns Yama, who loves her. She loves only those who bring her gifts of chaos. I've dated people like that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Next to my Kali entry in my list of characters that I could not live without because there are so many, I wrote, "Bitches be crazy."
Bitches be crazy.
Yeah, I have later in my notes, ultimately this is a bromance between the frenemies Sam and Yama.
Yeah.
Sam just wants Yama to dump Kali so bad. The name of your disease is Kali. You would not give power into the hands of the unworthy if that woman did not bid it. She cannot love a man. If you cease to suit her purposes, she will put you aside. I do not say this because we are enemies, but as one man to another.
But did Sam sleep with her? Yes, he did.
I'm just Ken.
That's a pretty perfect example of like the stilted dialogue.
Yeah.
You cannot sleep with this woman.
Dude, she is a disease.
Yeah.
It is weird how he transitions between these really nice passages and very stilted dialogue.
The first paragraph of every section, like when it breaks between plot scenes, I guess, are great. Yeah, like except for one that I'll get to in Misogynist Moment.
I kind of wish that just like someone helped him with this, because what I want to say, if I were the teacher, I would write, "You're on the right track."
Well, that's where I get confused, and I had so many emotions reading this because I get angry when I don't understand things, as y'all know. But so many of like the leaders in this genre are like, "This is the best book that's ever been written." And I'm like, well, what am I missing? Why can't I enjoy this like other people?
I wonder if it's like one of those things where when it came out at the time, it was so mind-blowing.
Yeah.
But now we've seen people emulate this and do it a little better.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, Zelazny walked so gay men could run with American gods.
Yeah.
Simmons wrote his Iliad, in Olympus books. And like, so I'm not impressed by this, I guess.
Yeah, and I had that
And
same
also, we
thought,
don't have us in this room don't need the Indian pantheon to
like
make
our
it
friend-
interesting.
Yeah, like our friend Jo Walton said. She said,
Joe.
Jo did not like it. Jo, I love her reviews. And Jo usually likes things. She's usually very enthusiastic. And she was like, I just can't. And she said, though, what seems now like cultural appropriation in 1967 was bonus points for acknowledging that another culture exists.
Right.
Yeah. But I think I mean, I could still admit that this is an interesting story, but it's just the execution. So
This also, to add to your list, Amy, about Simmons and so on, I've read a lot of Adrian Tchaikovsky in the last year, and I kept thinking of his stuff when I was reading this. His stuff is much more engaging. It has a lot more heart to it. I like the characters, but this book made me think a lot of his Hugo finalist novella from last year, Elder Race, which maybe it won. Did that win? I
forget.
I can't remember. And then, but it's so good. And then Ogres this year, so good. And I can't say one more sentence about it without potential spoilers for both of those books. And then Children of Time, the Children of Time series too, where you've got space humans pretending to be gods, and people are like, yeah, okay, and they believe it, and then hijinks ensue. And so I think that a lot of more modern stuff owes something to this book, and maybe to Zelazny's other works. So I get that genius. But Amy, you're absolutely right. Like with Foundation, it's given us a lot, but to read it in 2023, it doesn't feel exciting.
Yeah, and I checked out the other nominees for the novel for this year, and it was a couple of names that aren't the heavy hitters usually. I mean, hold on, let me get this right.
While you're doing that, I'll say another thing that Joe said. I haven't read any other Zelazny, but Joe said something about how she prefers Zelazny when he is in full witty narrator mode.
Yeah.
And I completely can see that
There are
because
glimpses here.
sometimes
There are glimpses
there
here.
are some burns, some quips,
Yes.
some very sharp
Man can
lines
write. That is for damn
that
sure.
are very funny. So I can imagine how if he just lets that kind of unleashes that you get something really good. But I think here it's just sort of uneven, and it's what am I reading? But I see so many good pieces of a different whole puzzle. Maybe.
Yeah. So okay, and part of I think this book is part of it's part of that new wave of science fiction where things were different and not just there's a robot on a spaceship. So 1968, the other nominees were Samuel R. Delany, The Einstein Intersection, Piers Anthony, Chthon, Chester Anderson, The Butterfly Kid, and Robert Silverberg, Thorn. So
Yeah. It was the 60s, man.
yeah, 60s, the late 60s, 1968 especially was a very weird year. Yeah. So I get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's kind of so I love every James Bond movie, but every old James Bond movie is Dr. No, it's 8-minute long scenes and it's very slow. And current James Bond movies are just explosions every 6 seconds. So I think our tastes as a society have changed a little bit.
I was thinking about this recently because I watched a movie on Netflix called In the Vast of Night, and it's a really interesting science fiction movie. It's an alien movie, but the way it's shot is a really extended Twilight Zone episode.
Oh, that's cool.
And it does this thing where it just focuses on one thing, like a person's face or a TV screen or something like that. And a whole lot of stuff happens, but you're just looking at one person.
Oh, that's cool.
And it made me think about how the things we watch and read and do now are just so fast. So we have so little patience now. I was thinking about that very thing when I was watching. Anyway, I do recommend that movie. I thought it was very interesting and good.
Although this book does sort of flail from scene to scene.
That's true.
Sometimes maybe it's the formatting of the ebook, but sometimes it was not completely clear to me that I was in a new scene because the line breaks were not great.
There were section breaks in the book, the physical book.
Yeah, I had the real book, and I'm so much more in love with ebooks because I can take better notes and remember things and do word counts.
Me
so
too.
it's just kind of
you need to get your notebook. Right now, I'm showing people a notebook full of notes that I can't read because there's so many.
I'm going to take a picture of Amy's list of characters. Her dramatis personae.
I had to remember who the Trimurti
There's going to be a pop quiz, and you have to identify them and match them with lines a text.
And I'm good with names, and I was like, who?
Oh, I wrote down what they were the gods of too, because that was interesting to me. Helba is the goddess of thieves. Vayu is winds. Indra is thunder. It's interesting.
For the longest time, I didn't know Kubera was a god. I just thought he was their friend. I just thought he was a guy.
He's the fourth keeper of the world.
I found that out eventually.
But what does that mean?
Oh.
I don't know. He's part of the Lokapalas, and he's a fourth keeper of the world.
What's the Lokapala?
I don't know.
I was just reading.
No, that was not in the book. Might have been in the book.
This is kind of like reading the dictionary.
Yeah, that word is in the book a bunch of times, but I never knew exactly what it was. I was just like, that's a group. Do you guys, I have some thoughts on the gender stuff. Do you guys have any thoughts on the gender thoughts?
Oh, yeah. Brahma was interesting.
You mentioned the trans stuff, which I thought for a minute, but then I was like, once you've changed bodies 86 times, I think it's less important.
Well, but I thought with Brahma, I thought it was really interesting because Brahma was originally a woman on the ship Madeline, And they don't use the language of trans or gender identity. But he says, so Madeline chooses to be Brahma as a god and is like the most manly, very much performing masculinity.
He's like the Zeus.
Axe body spray, the whole deal. I'm a manly man.
It's all very Ed Hardy up in there.
Yeah.
No homo. And he's got like, well, he has all the bitches. He's got a swimming pool full of hot
But they just want to play water polo and not have sex with him.
And they're not that into him. Yeah, they're not that into him. And he's like, look how I'm just Ken. Look how high. Everyone.
His job is God.
Yeah.
His job is being muscular. His job is pool. So anyway, the narration says, it was almost as if sex were a thing that transcended biology, and no matter how hard he tried to suppress the memory and destroy that segment of spirit, Brahma had been born a woman and somehow was a woman still. And I just thought that was so interesting because Zelazny is separating sex or gender identity, as I think what he means by that, from biology, but then goes on to really divorce that from any degree of self-determination. Because I feel like if Madeline had always felt that being a man would be right, then Madeline would probably settle in and feel like a man. So it's interesting that Zelazny's sort of like...
Well, it's like she has this suspicion that the people she's attracted to can tell she's a woman and aren't attracted to her.
Yeah, and it isn't to say that like a physical transition would solve all of someone's problems with their gender identity or whatever. And, speaking as a cis person, like I'm just talking. I'm just making up facts. But I thought it was interesting that he like said out loud that your gender identity and your biology don't have to be connected to each other and that you just are who you are regardless of whatever body you're in. And I found that to be very interesting that he said it out loud like that.
Now that you're talking about it like this, that ties into one of the theme I was talking about a minute ago, which is like, what things are packaged in doesn't matter.
Oh, yeah.
What matters is the self, right?
It's almost like it's all connected on a wheel.
It's a little bit anti-trans in a way.
Yeah, it's a little turf. It's like you're always a woman.
It's saying basically it doesn't matter what body you put yourself in. You're always going to be, your fundamental self is always going to be this
right.
gender.
It's doing both of those things because it's saying like your gender and your biology are not related to each other, which, okay, I'm on board with that.
But you're stuck with one gender.
But he's also like, that's why I said it's like divorced from any degree of self-determination.
That's really interesting.
I think if she had just became a man for the first time, I would buy that argument. But if she's gone through like 87 bodies, I think it would eventually get wishy-washy.
But she always picks men.
Every single time?
And
that's what
they
said.
Says he. The book always uses
the book does say he, but then at the end,
character.
that God talks about going back to be a woman.
That god is dead. That by the end of the book, that's Kali.
Then it was before they died.
Brahma gets killed.
Yeah, must be before they died then, because Brahma talks to Sam.
Brahma? When Brahma is Kali, or when
before
Brahma is
dies.
Brahma number one.
Brahma number one.
It's so confusing.
Brahma number one talks to Sam about going back and being a woman.
Yeah. That makes sense.
So I think what's happening here is interesting because I think number one, I like the way he expresses that.
Yeah.
And then like in the same sentence, I'm like, hold on. And like you said, Haley, it sounds a little turfy.
Yeah.
But I almost think that it's also like what Joe said about in 1967, the idea that a person would say,
it's
the body that you have doesn't determine your identity.
Yeah.
Is like pretty. I mean, I was kind of like, okay, you're almost there. You're dancing around something.
If he would just stop there.
Yeah.
I mean, it's okay for him to say that your essence doesn't change no matter what body you're in. As he just doesn't need to say that your essence has a gender.
Well, that's what I started thinking about too. Like if your body, because like so much of we are socialized in most places as a gender, your parents give birth to a child and you're like, here's your pink dress, here's your long hair.
Here's your long hair.
And so that shapes your worldview for maybe ever. Like if I were to change bodies 50, and even like the size of your body, the color of your body changes how you interact with the world and your identity and how you see things. Mm-hmm. I wonder if that changes over 80 lifetimes. I don't know. Probably. I would hope so.
Well, the point I think is that Brahma in that scene doesn't think it does, right?
I think it's a little bit, and this is my interpretation, because the way he talks about women, we'll get to later on in this podcast. Like, I think it's a little bit like, haha, you're just like a dumb lady in a man's body. You'll never be a dude.
I do too. I do. Yeah. I think that's what
100%.
I think that's what at least the other male characters in the book think. I think that's what Sam thinks. Yeah. Because at one point Sam calls Brahma Madeline, and on the one hand, it's like a way of winking and being like, I know who you are. Yeah. But on the other hand, it's like, that's kind of mean. But then they end their conversation on a good foot. So I don't know.
Well, I think Sam's gaslighting Brahma.
Well, and
because Sam absolutely makes fun of Brahma. in
Yeah.
that moment.
Yeah.
And then Brahma gets all mad and he's like, what are you talking about? I didn't do anything. And like makes Brahma feel like what he interpreted wasn't right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I thought that Sam was very rude, and then the conversation ended on a high note, and I was a little confused.
Well,
by
it
that.
made sense to me after I realized that was the pre-Enlightenment Sam. So Sam was still a jerk then.
So Sam was pre-Enlightenment, but Sam was still in opposition to the Pantheon,
At
correct?
the time, I think at the time he just wasn't living as one of them. Like he was an accelerationist and the rest of them weren't. So he kind of went down to earth to like, I don't think he got along with them more than anything else. I don't think he was actively against them at that time.
Okay.
He's a special boy.
He became against them when he learned about the Masters of Karma and what the gods were doing to prevent society from moving forward
Oh,
and
okay,
like, all
I
that
see.
stuff.
I see.
So he got radicalized.
I see.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
I think.
I think I needed another couple of paragraphs of just how bad the gods were for me to be on Team Sam.
Well, I think it's not so much that they were doing active. I mean, they were keeping the caste system alive.
Yeah.
They were keeping people down who were down and letting people up who would be on their side, right? But they weren't actively like murdering people in the streets. But Sam, I think they were definitely oppressing the society. I mean, they were artificially keeping it back. They were.
I wonder if they were. So are the gods also the government, or is there a separate government?
They are
Yeah,
also the
it's also the
government
government.
because they're basically dangling
Yeah.
life and death over the heads of the people.
Yeah.
And they have all the technology, so it makes them seem powerful. They have a thermonuclear thunder stick that Agni goes around with.
But they can't call it that. They call it the man with the hat.
I know. So like they have these weapons and they have this power, and so they're definitely oppressing the people.
Well, but that's the failure of this book. Is I'm like, I need more genocide.
I know all this intellectually, right?
Yeah,
But like
like-
when I'm reading it, I'm like,
Are they
what?
that bad? I'm just like, okay, so they do a mind probe,
But
right?
they are that bad. I mean, they're
I didn't feel it. I'm
they're
sorry,
like
though.
scientifically keeping the caste system going. Like they're like building people vats to make sure that the caste
and
system
they're
stays
the
alive.
worst kind of leaders. They're the kind of leader like the Trimurti. Like Brahma wants everybody to love him and want to have sex with him. Vishnu, I think it's Vishnu, likes to just go fight. It might be Shiva. I can't remember which one.
Wait, what?
Shiva's the one that likes to just ride into battle.
How could
And
you
then-
get confused, Amy?
And then Vishnu. So they all have their own things they're doing.
Yeah.
It's all self-involved. They're all very self-involved, right? So they're the worst kind of leaders. Like they don't care at all about them.
I think I just need like any good book about like someone overthrowing a revolution. It's not told from the point of
This
view
is
of the
not
bad
a fun
guys.
revolution.
Yeah, like I need one chapter from like some like conspirators with Sam, like saying like, man, this they killed my mom, man. Like I need a little bit of heart.
No, I'm kind of okay with that though, because I feel like that's the perspective that we have on revolution and making changes is like, well, we're not just being like, we're not all being steamrolled in the streets. And what I almost said is we're not just being shot in the streets. When in reality, in America, many of us are just being shot in the streets. So I think that there's like, I feel okay about seeing a bad government that isn't like doing war on its people all of the time. I feel like that's an important thing to see and an important thing to see opposition to. And like maybe it's not the most exciting reading, but I do like that it's like he just wants people to be able to have a better life and have access to the privileges that exist that are like actively denied to them. And I think that's like a worthwhile story to tell, even though I don't find this book super entertaining.
Yeah.
But I think it's a worthwhile
Yeah.
thing to portray.
I also liked that he has to run this long con because everybody is so devoted to the gods, right? That he can't just be like, rise up against the gods, because nobody's going to do that, right? So he has to run this long con. He has to implant the idea of Buddhism. He has to implant the idea of that they should want technology through another channel. He has to do this in a long way which is, I think, validates a lot of the way people live if they're trying to self-actualize in a world that doesn't want them to. Like that's revolutionary, even if you're not taking up arms in the streets, if that makes any sense at all.
Yeah. And he, through the privilege that he has as a god,
Right.
gets to live long enough to actually do that.
Yeah.
True.
I like that he is a Prometheus figure, except that instead of fire or light, it's can openers and toilets.
Yep.
I thought it was very funny specifically
Toilets.
when he said can openers. Yeah, these people are bad people. They don't want him to have toilets. Toilets and a printing press.
Bifocals, I think was.
They don't want them to have that. You like your mom didn't want you to have the good can
That's
opener.
true. That's true.
They don't want them to have clean toilets, which is like a health issue, and they don't want them to be like literate en masse.
All right.
They don't want them to have a printing press.
So they're very into the idea of keeping them oppressed. Do we know why?
Because they want to be in power, I think.
See, I guess I just need something more
But
beyond
yeah,
that.
I do. I agree with you. I don't always just like the like.
We're bad.
They want power. I'm sort of like, well, what does that look like?
Like, is it fun for them?
But
Yeah.
again, though, that is sort of like where people act like privileges are pie and they're not. Like, everyone could actually have a good life, and your life wouldn't be worse if your neighbor had a good life.
And it's also a lot of paternalism, I think. Like,
It's their family, technically, which is very weird.
Sam
very
has a
inbred.
conversation with Brahma about not letting them have technology, and Brahma's like, they're not ready for it, or they don't deserve it, or something like
Well,
that.
and that is such a common thing in science fiction. Like, like the uplift war and the idea of like, even in Star Trek, like we can't contact the societies that don't have a warp drive. So I love that. I love the idea that like eventually every human society, doesn't matter what planet, will invent can openers. Like that part was super fascinating. And I would read
First
7
we have to
pages
make
about
cans.
it. Yeah. But we developed cans before can openers. So yeah. So I think for me, to have that work, I just need a little more detail. So
100%.
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, like I said, the ideas are not bad.
Ideas are great.
Did you guys laugh every time you saw the word Slizzard and
Oh,
think to
yes.
yourself, like a G6?
I don't
Really?
know what you're talking
When
about.
we
laughed.
drink, we do it right. We get Slizzard.
Yeah.
Sipping scissor
Hi,
in my
like a
rye.
G6.
Like
Yeah.
a G6.
Yeah. My very first talking point is a quote. The first wave is of Slizzard cavalry. Sometimes I'm just like, oh, come on.
I pictured very squat stegosauruses.
I don't know what I picked. I couldn't picture it.
I didn't picture anything.
No, Sam, I was like, it's not a lizard, and I hate this word. I'm not going to think about it.
It's a slizzard.
Oh,
What
it's
about
so
the word
dumb.
fornicatorium?
Oh, I love that word.
That's a
I
good
wrote that
one.
word down
Sounds
on
like
my
a fun
notes.
place to go.
A fornicatorium.
That's very
So
ancient
good.
Rome. I like it.
It's so good. Oh, I LOL'd every time I read the phrase demon repellent.
So when you say
spray it.
LOL, do you mean laugh out loud or Lord of
I
Light?
Lord of Lighted every time I read the phrase.
Demon repellent is really funny.
Demon repellent.
I feel like, well, sometimes I'm like, writer, just call it what it is. Don't make up a goofy name. But in this instance, I think I would have liked something a little more glamorous than demon repellent.
I want to throw Zelazny one more bone real quick. So there are 2 kinds of enlightenment in this book, and I liked that. There was the Buddhist enlightenment, where you learn to live without suffering or whatever, without desire and without suffering. And there's also the now kind of enlightenment where you get technology.
Oh, yeah, like enlightened.
So there's 2 kinds of enlightenment that the Lord of Light brings to the world, and I thought that was
Babe,
kind of
you are so smart.
that was clever.
I just saw a lot of words on some pages.
You should have been DM. It's true.
Listen, I crammed for this like it was a law school exam. I didn't get any of this when I read it. I read the internet, and the internet helped me.
I read so many things, and I'm still like, huh?
I didn't study at all. I just read this book and I went like a G6.
I was so mad that I didn't
Slizzard.
understand anything.
We joke sometimes that we're not smart enough. We are very intelligent ladies.
I have
with
high reading
graduate
comprehension.
degrees. I read all kinds of books. I read classics, and
Joe Herbert says we're delightful.
it's hard when I'm just like,
I just have to believe him at this
Yeah.
point because
yeah, it's hard. I mean, reading Delaney was hard, but this was a little different. I don't know. At least Delaney, there's like emotion. Like the man was attracted to fucked up fingernails.
Yeah, and like a
anxiety, termination. Like I
that
remember
book
more
has
from
a
that.
plot. It's a novel.
Yeah,
It
that's
is
true.
not just a bunch of pages about the same guy between 2 covers. It is a novel. And I maintain I don't really think this is a novel. I ain't mad at it, but I don't think it is a novel.
also, haha, there was a museum of heaven. I think that's funny.
There is some very funny stuff.
That's
in
funny.
here.
I think-
I just wanted
Yeah.
someone to help him. Help him make it punch it up.
He needed a nice wife.
He needs Dan Simmons' wife to do some research and some editing.
What was that joke I sent you? It was a review that was like, this is like foundation. If you like tobacco and smoking, you'll like All right. Anybody got a feminist favorite?
I do, but not really. It's just kind of funny. One time, Kali says to Tak, "For me, it is a great strain even to assume a pleasing shape for more than a few minutes." To which I say, "Girl, same."
To which I say,
Mine was, so Kali and Yama get married, but for her to become Brahma, she has to become like a man. And she's like, see you later.
yep.
Yeah,
Peace out.
He's like, I'm going to divorce you. No homo. And she's like, okay,
Bye. I get to be Zeus? Okay, done.
I did not find it feminist favorite. Y'all's are good.
That's the only one. I think together we all understand the book, but only together.
Our powers combined. We're like the Trimurti.
Because like everyone's like, oh, I missed that part. I missed that part. I missed that part.
I thought of something while we were talking just then. Was this phrase in the internet or in the book, the mothers of the terrible glow?
I don't recall it.
There was something about the glow.
Yeah. Delissa as a character.
Yeah, she's in there.
I just liked that phrase, the mothers of the terrible glow.
Oh, I like that.
It's good. I'll use that as my feminist favorite.
You're like, that's my sentence favorite. Misogynist moment. There's so many to choose from.
I think mine is definitely Kali being Ratri being sentenced to be a middle-aged woman. Like that was the worst thing that could ever happen.
Middle-aged and plain.
As a middle-aged plain woman.
Let me read the exact quote. The Lady Ratri was banished from the city and sentenced to walk the world as a mortal, always to be incarnated into middle-aged bodies of more than usually plain appearance.
More than usually
It's just like somehow meaner than saying ugly and fat. More than usually plain.
More than usually plain. Which also I feel in my heart.
Zelazny was a little fat phobic. Like,
there was another
Kubera
one,
was like, I just
Kubera
always
was
get fat.
prone to fatness. Yeah.
Like something in his spirit makes him fat. Like, what?
Actually, but like with the gender thing, I feel like there's a mean reading and a less mean reading. And the less mean reading is like, it's not like something that you did. Because people are mean to fat people, like, you must be lazy, or like, you ate too much, or it's your fault, or whatever. And they're like, no, it's just a trait.
That's a good show.
It's an inherent
That's
trait.
True. That's a very generous reading of that.
I don't think that's what he meant.
That's a very generous reading of that.
I mean, I kind of was like, yeah, okay, so it doesn't matter what he does, so he might as well not beat himself up, and he should just be happy. And everyone should be happy at any size. Be happy.
That idea really got me thinking, because, like, you lose your body, what traits do you keep? Like, I bite my nails because I have nails. What if I didn't have nails?
This is the strangest thing to me is, like, at some point they were talking about, so I'm assuming at some point the people somehow scientifically altered themselves to have these abilities that they have. Like, Yama can look at somebody and kill him.
Yeah.
Sam has electromagnetic powers of some kind, blah, blah, blah. And Sam asked Yama, I can't remember who asked who, but I think it was Sam asked Yama, how that works, basically. And Yama was like, it's chemical and electrical. And the body, it just gets changed when you're in there.
Animal, vegetable,
and that was the science.
It's better than making up bullshit, I guess.
But it goes back to the whole idea that there's some kernel of you.
Yeah.
The
you.
Yeah, and and I thought it was interesting. They're talking about the Atman concept in the book is a concept in Buddhism and Hinduism, and Christianity we call it a soul, but and the idea that it's something both physical in us, like something that makes us, and then but there's also something sort of ineffable.
Well, that's why I wish there was more. Like he clearly knows his shit about Eastern religions. I would just more, please.
Do he?
I think so. I mean, he knows the names.
He definitely read the Edith Hamilton's
He knows a lot of names.
Hindu mythology.
He read a list of god names and chose them. Yeah. What else you got?
Okay. Well, I have 5. So I'd like for you guys to go
I only
ahead.
had the one.
I just had one.
Are you guys done?
Oh, yeah, go for it.
I thought you guys would have.
I didn't have an ebook, so it was hard.
Well, you can do things like compare the female gods to the male gods and talk about the differences there, because like Ratri is kind of dumb but pretty. Kali is just a nightmare,
like a manic pixie dream god.
Yeah, like she's just a nightmare, and you can and then Kali shows back up as my blank blank daughter.
Yeah, I mean that's
say it.
That's kind of true. That's kind of true with Greek gods. Like the only like amazing one in my opinion is Athena. She's like wisdom and warrior, but the rest are like, I'm the pretty one. I'm the sexy one.
Okay. Ready? I need to warm up. Me. Okay.
Misogynist.
Talk on seeing Kali for the first time after a while. He was dismayed. Her figure, once lithe, was wide about the waist. Her walk, once swaying of boughs, was a waddle.
I remember waddle.
Her complexion was too dark. Even through the veil lines of her nose and jaw were too pronounced. And I said,
was that Kali or Ratri?
That was Kali. I think it was Kali.
Can you imagine getting...
Maybe it was Ratri.
He had the same reaction to Ratri.
But the thing is,
read by
he's a monkey. I said, you're a monkey.
Yeah.
You're a monkey. You're a monkey. Sir. It's right here. Sir, you are a monkey.
In the first chapter, they're like, "Go peel a banana with your foot, monkey," and it's just it's the cycle of toxic abuse.
Peel a banana with your foot is. I want to use that.
Yeah, that's a good one.
That quote that I just read was on page 6, and I was like, okay, I'm in for a wild ride.
As soon as I saw Waddle, I was like, "Oh, this man doesn't. He's got it."
Okay, so then a few minutes later, upon seeing either Kali or Ratri, whoever it was, she's beautiful. He says,
Oh,
she was no longer the dumpy little matron with whom he had spoken. And then I think right after is when she says, for me, it's a great strain. Like, I can look hot, but it takes a lot of effort to, like, glamour herself.
Because her soul is trying to make her body back to being beautiful no matter what body she's in. Because that's part of her soul.
She's inherently beautiful.
She's inherently
That's the
beautiful.
most important thing that a woman can be. So,
But it also says we shouldn't praise people just for being beautiful because they didn't do anything.
said that out loud. So, Sam, when he's talking to Brahma 1.0, this is so rude of him. What's it feel like, madam, to be a real stud after having been a gal to start out with?
Oh,
Yeah,
it gets
that was
worse.
the mean thing he said.
it gets worse
That
because
kind of hurts.
damn.
And then he said, bet every Lizzie in the world would envy you
Lizzie.
if she knew. Congratulations. Does he mean lesbian? He does.
Yes. That was what he gaslit her with. And he said Lizzie, and I almost fell out of my chair.
What a shitburger. Well, that might make sense, actually, if she is not a trans man and she is a lesbian, but she thought her only option to be in relationships with women was to be a big hunky man.
Yeah.
There could be that, too. It's all fucked up. I'm saying he just walked up to something interesting and then he ran around and did not so nice things.
It makes me think, there's some books that we read where, like, the misogynist moment is like Asimov, it seems like it was accidental or like he just left out women. Zelazny was like, let me be really fucking mean to women. Let me use words like dumpy and waddling.
Well, guys, I'll leave you with this. The day of the battle dawned pink as the fresh-bitten thigh of a maiden.
Fresh-bitten thigh?
That was my boob talk.
Oh, yeah. Well, in my boob talk, which is next, I don't think there are any actual boobs, but plenty of objectification. See above.
Yeah.
Do y'all have any? There's not a lot of food in here.
There's not a lot
There's
of
like
food.
some fruit.
The one that I liked was the preserved Burgundy wine from Urith, from Old Urith, when they had the bottle of wine.
Oh, yeah.
And Sam was like, a Burgundy. And I was thinking, though, that was such a good moment. Because, like, imagine if you had been several lifetimes on another planet and you saw, like, some prepared food from home. I'd be like,
I would
Doritos.
immediately die.
Yeah. So I thought that was a really good moment where I connected with him a little bit. Because imagine if you hadn't had a Dorito for 300 years and then someone was like,
Or 3,000.
I have these crispy things.
Soap stuff.
I mean, this book.
So I always leave this to Lori, but I wanted to preface it with this. There's more machinations here than 1,000 seasons of any soap opera.
I think Sam killing himself and popping up in another body was my favorite one.
Yeah, I think the whole, like, body thing. Oh, I had that. When Sam dies, he doesn't die really because Taraka, quote, strengthened his flames, and Sam had forgotten until that moment. And the changing bodies thing is pretty soapy.
The last 3 sentences, what?
Oh, I also liked the idea that, like, we have to have a Brahma, so Kali, now you're Brahma, and someone else gets promoted to being Kali is very funny. And the whole, like, thing in the culture where people just change bodies all the time makes that very expedient.
I wonder if one of the minor gods then becomes Kali.
Yeah, I think that is what happens. One of the lesser demigods
But then what
gets
happens
promoted.
to that? I'm thinking of, like, the organizational chart. Like, does one of the lesser gods, do they get, like, a good human?
I don't know.
One of the good ones out of the vat.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Did you like the book?
Nope.
I liked chapters 1 through 4. 5 through 7 I did not like at all. And I have to say, I would not have finished this book if not for the podcast.
100%. The characters are just a list of names, in my opinion. I'd love a short story told from the point of view of someone living on the planet.
Yeah. Give me one of the people who are going up to that prayer wheel.
Yeah, I
and
love
shoving their coins
the
in.
prayer wheel is so cool.
Oh,
The
there
prayer
are so
mat?
many
Yeah.
neat little things.
Oh, 100%, yeah.
The
Yeah.
prayer mat, that made me think of getting a mammogram because the machine was called the mammomat.
It made me think of mat play.
Oh, I meant to mention, too, that they also mentioned tapes in here, and I love...
Yes, tapes did show up.
I want tapes in all of my sci-fi.
tapes.
And Lori takes tapes so much.
What I have to say to Roger is good try. You're on the right track.
Yeah. There were some good parts.
I appreciate your genius.
There were some good
But
parts.
I do not want to spend time in your world.
Our apologies to the requesters of this book.
My apologies to Bob. So Bob is so nice. Bob sends us really nice emails, went out of his way to get into Apple Podcasts and give us a good review. This is Bob's absolute favorite book. And Bob, I just hope that we're still friends. Because I know this book really means a lot to you, and
I will say this.
we like you.
I can see why this book means a lot to a lot of people.
I think
I will say that.
Yeah.
If I had the time to read it 10 times, I might appreciate it more.
Yeah. It's entirely possible that if I read it a couple more times, things would strike me as more meaningful than when I went through it this time, hoping for like action, right?
You
So
have to understand it first.
Right. So now that I know what I'm getting into, if I read it again, I probably would appreciate it more. So I can absolutely see why this is someone's favorite book.
Yeah.
I would never judge someone for this being their favorite book.
No.
Like I think I just wanted something different.
Yeah.
And that's not Roger's fault.
So you going to read it again?
No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
Life is short.
Life is short.
I don't have another body to jump into, so
That's
I'm
true.
going to read some other books.
We're just middle-aged ladies.
I'm cursed to be a middleaged lady forever
Oh, no.
until I'm an old lady.
You know, I think once a week about how Joe Walton has read Citeen like 1,000 times. and there's no book that I will do that to. Like Moby Dick will come close, but
She must read really fast.
and like all day long.
Yeah.
I read A Confederacy of Dunces probably like 20 times.
That's one that you and I will never agree on.
I haven't read it in a long time.
I would
but,
be interested to revisit it.
Actually, I should try and read that now because the last time I read it, I was in college, and I wonder if I would appreciate it more
That's
now.
when I loved it.
Yeah.
I thought it was so funny.
Should we start Pulitzer, I Hardly Know Her, the podcast? We could just switch formats.
You
we
can't
win a
use that. We'll
can we-
sue you.
Can we win a Pulitzer?
What if we did?
I hardly know her. Okay, so Hugo Girl is recused from awards, but
True.
Pulitzer,
I hardly know her.
is not. That's a new project.
I would love to read some.
When we
other-
finish the Hugos, we'll
Yeah.
roll this on over.
That's true.
Phase 2.
Or Nebula, bitch. All right, Star Wars or Lord of the Rings?
I vote present.
I said Lord of the Rings because there's Peter Jackson-esque battles between sides, and I don't care about them.
I thought about
Just like
I actually thought about the battles in Lord of the Rings and how I definitely skimmed those when I read it.
Which is funny because me and Amy just saw Napoleon, which is 3 hours of men shooting cannons at each other, and I was like, more.
Sometimes it's interesting, and sometimes I say this. I feel like too often. Sometimes things work better on a screen, and
This
I
is
think
true.
some of this
needed visuals.
Some of this felt like I was reading a screenplay.
Yeah.
like sometimes some of the
Yeah,
narration
yeah.
felt like direction.
But you definitely weren't because that was stolen during the Iran hostage crisis.
Yeah.
For sure. Oh yeah, go read the Wikipedia. It's interesting.
One of my favorite podcasts, The Rewatchables, it's a movie podcast. They have a million categories like we do. And one of theirs is, would this be better as a 10-part Netflix show? And I say yes.
Yeah.
I agree. I'm gonna say not Star Wars, not Lord of the Rings, a Netflix special. That's what it is.
All right.
What are we
What's
reading
next?
time?
Spin.
Spin. That's a fun one. And it's so easy to understand. Oh,
Yay!
I'm really excited by that. That seems like uniformly enjoyed.
yeah. What are we reading after that? Yeah.
We decided.
Yeah.
Yeah, what was it again? I forget.
Our dear friend Kristen Mulzer has requested a book that is something I'm going to pull up on my phone.
Why can't I remember?
right now?
I just
that I
put
can't
it,
remember.
I put it on our schedule.
Oh, The Sparrow,
Oh, The Sparrow, yeah.
Yeah.
And we read that like 8 years ago.
and it was definitely nominated for a Hugo. It
Yeah.
did not win,
That's a fun one, though.
but man,
And then after that, The Wind Wails of Ishmael.
yes.
Yay.
So we're just going off of Hugos for
and
a while.
that was recommended to us on Blue Sky.
One day I want us to read Endurance because that'd be a good like ship book to add to our pantheon.
I love that book.
I know, it's so good.
We've never done a nonfic.
Yeah, that's true.
So, The Wind Wails of Ishmael is by Philip Jose Farmer, recommended
yeah.
to us on Blue Sky by Chris Wants a Drumstick.
Me too, Chris.
He wrote To Your Scattered Bodies Go.
He
which-
sure did.
It's going to be a wild ride, I bet.
Chris says about this book, Ishmael gets sent a billion years into the future at the end of Moby Dick and sails airships to hunt giant flying creatures. It's amazing/terrible. You'll love it.
Hell yeah.
I just think you guys are so good to us. Thank you for sending these
Yeah, that sounds
recommendations.
amazing.
Absolutely.
Also, unrelated, I found myself on Delaney's Wikipedia page today because he's a fascinating man. And there's a New Yorker profile on him from July that is really worth reading. A man spends like a week solid with him and just follows him around his house, goes on
I
errands.
might have read that.
It's
Was it
really
his
good.
birthday or something? He was very much in the news this year for some
I
reason.
forget. And then I remembered how wonderful his Facebook is, Samuel Delaney's. He just posts things. He's like,
Here's my oatmeal. It's cute.
yeah, or lately he's been like, Moby Dick was written in 1851, and he just talks for 6 minutes about, or like 6 paragraphs about it. So yeah, I was just like having Zelazny made me nostalgic for Delaney, which is an insane thing to say. So yeah.
Oh, God bless. All right, kids.
See y'all next time.
That's it.
I think we've done it.
Bye.
Bye.
Pulitzer, I hardly know her.